Right, well, it's another cold morning here. A really cold morning with freezing conditions, and I'm fighting my way through the woods here. I've seen there's bricks, and I'm fighting my way to get to my 2CV. There it is, look, covered in frost. And we'll see if it starts any better now that it's had the engine improvement and the new coil and the new leads. And look at that. So we do get some cold weather here in England. It's probably the coldest night now that we've had, and you can see the 2CV is well and truly frosted over, and I think it should start. I hope it starts better than it used to. Okay, we'll get the choke out. Yeah, it's full choke. Right, and we'll see what happens. Well, that's that's good. That's really good. Now let that run. Now that's the result, I hope, of that new coil, and I'm hoping that I'll get a result as good as that when the engine's hot. It was running all right and starting when it was hot when I picked it up, but of course we're not in the summer at the moment, obviously, so we'll let that run now. Let's have a look at some of these other cars. Right. I think what we'll do is we'll try starting the Dodge up and see if that will start in this cold weather. Let it have a run for a while. Right. Pull the choke out on that and turn the ignition on, and then that's the starter there. Well, that 6-volt battery is actually, that's turning over quite well. It sounds ridiculous, but it is turning over quite well. The trouble is that the reason it's not starting is basically there's no fuel up there, and I'm pumping it. Normally, as soon as the fuel gets up to a carburetor and pumps in, it will start. It's whether or not that battery will keep it going. I think we're going to run the battery down. No, right, what we're going to do, I'm actually going to put this battery on charge, so that'll be a job for this morning. Right, well that's the Dodge on charge. 6-volt charger. Well, it's on 6-volt. So we'll leave that for the rest of the day, I think. We'll see what happens. Okay, the 2CV is still running away. Had the choke pushed in. Make sure it's in all the way, I think. No, it's not. So that's impressive. I'm really pleased with that. That started instantly. Certainly can't complain about that. I think I'm going to start these other two cars up and just let them run for a quarter of an hour or so. Right, the Avon time. Right. Amazing modern cars, aren't they? Right. Let that tick over for a while. Now, the Jag was the car that had the problem with the flat battery, which I charged up. Let's see what's happened with that now. Lovely car, this. Well, that started easy enough. There again, I think I'll just let this run. Right.
Welcomes the change, but says a massive cash injection is needed to make it work.
Yeah, massive cash injection, that's what I need. Right. Right, so we got those cars started. And this one on charge. Right, we'll leave that there for the rest of the day, I think, and let these run for 20 minutes or so. Try and sort out some global warming here. Oh, this 2CV is brilliant. Its only failing is, of course, its heating system, which pretty non-existent. It's just beginning to push enough warm air up there to start defrosting that. Right, we'll leave that for a bit, see what happens. Right, well, it's warmed up. I'm pleased with those little chrome wiper blades. Well, the holder part. Lovely. I know they're going to reflect in the sun, but I think they're lovely. Right, well, it's a lovely morning, but it's been another cold night, but the 2CV started perfectly, and it's now running, warming up. I've had it out for a little run around, but there we go. But the main thing is that the Dodge here has had about 3 days of charging up on this battery. So I'm going to try and, actually I'm going to put a cover over it, try and keep some of the dust off it, and I'm just going to see if it'll start this morning. Well, I don't think it's charged up. Yes, it has. Yes, it's gone green. That's charged up. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll unplug this. Right, so I think we'll try starting it now again. These are the new cables that were fitted, much thicker cables, so hopefully they'll help. Okay, let's see what happens this morning. I've always got confidence in this car, but the problem is, of course, that the battery was running low. See what happens now. Well, it's certainly turning over okay. That's about as fast as I've ever had this turn over, and it sounds obviously slow by modern standards, I'm sure, but it's quite good. The trouble is that the mechanical pump is trying to get fuel up to the engine. There we go. Now you need to push this choke right in. Right, well that's, there we go. As I say, it's always started once the fuel seems to get up there. And the problem is, as long as the battery's got enough power in it to churn it over for, 30 seconds or whatever. So, we'll just get it warmed a little bit. Now we've got a throttle cable here, so, no. I just killed it, right. Try that again. Right, there we go. So I've just pulled that out a bit to keep the revs up. I don't really know the history of the hand throttle. I'm kind of guessing that it's for what it is, keeping the engine at higher revs when it's cold like this. But I often think that, was it really used for cruise control? Because I'm certainly on a long journey when you're going down the highway, mile after mile, and you're probably in those days cruising at really 50 miles an hour maybe, but and there weren't that many cars about, obviously, and no junctions or anything, just straight road. You just pull the hand throttle out, and you just cruise along with the torque on this engine. You wouldn't need to do anything else, and it would just run, indefinitely, really, at sort of 50 miles an hour. And then all you need to do, obviously, to disengage it is just to push it in. It's certainly good. I mean, it's I've tried it on roads. It works really well, actually. But obviously you can adjust the cable a bit. Just pushed it in a bit, gently, and lowered the revs. I just slightly higher than tick over. Try and get the engine warmed up. Let it run for a bit. Then I'm going to put a cover over it. It's not a weatherproof cover, but it's a cover that will try and keep some of the dust off it. So I'll leave a couple of windows slightly open, I think, when I put it on. But it's only a cloth cover, just keeps dust off. Okay, we'll let that run now. I've got a very peculiar problem now. Right. Well, under this cover is my Mercedes estate, and just when I was parking it up to put the cover over it, I had a problem with it which I've never had in the 20 years that I've owned it, and that was that it kept stalling. It kept cutting out. Now, it's low on fuel, at least according to the fuel gauge, but it's not completely out, and in fact this car has a reserve light that comes on, and when the light comes on you can do at least, well, I've found I can do about 10-15 miles probably. So, sometimes I never worry till the light comes on. But the light wasn't on, so, I didn't think that was a problem. but I put the cover on it and left it, and because the cover was on, it's been cold, I haven't bothered. But now I'm going to have a go at it this morning, see if it starts, because and runs, because I mean, this car, in all the years I've had it, it just starts and runs without a problem. Doesn't matter what the weather's like. Right, let's see what happens. There is, the warning light's working. Well, there we go. Alright, let's start it instantly. And it's running fine. Maybe you didn't notice, but the warning light over there for the low fuel came on when the ignition was on. But as soon as the engine started, of course, it went out, so that, you know, it's working, so we haven't got that low yet. Right, well, that seems to be absolutely fine. I think we'll just let that run a bit, warm up for a quarter of an hour, and then we'll leave it. But that's a worry off my mind. Doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. So as soon as the weather clears up a bit and it's not so muddy or anything, I'll take this out and fill it up with fuel, or put some fuel in it anyway. Okay, 20 years and it's still going well. Right, well, while I'm in the mood for starting cars up again, I think I'll try the Crossfire. Now, the Crossfire has not been started for at least 6 weeks, I would think now. I tucked it away here, and well, maybe it's been started maybe a month, but anyway, I tucked it away here, out of the way, when I started getting work done on the 2CV. Anyway, let's see what happens. Right. We'll try it now. Ah, okay. Instant karma.
I'm really not afraid.
So we'll let this warm up. That started instantly, no problem. That's the joy of modern cars, eh? You know, with the old cars, it's pull the choke out, pump it, try and hope it'll start, running the battery down. But this all works on a computer, look. Revs are now dropping. Amazing. Amazing while it works.
Features in the titles of hit singles by Engelbert Humperdinck, Status Quo, and Toby Burke.
You did. Well, I did learn it.
Yeah, no, but you didn't
I didn't play it. I bottled it.
Yeah.
I did learn how to play it.
Play it on what? Really? Impressive.
Not if you heard it, wouldn't it? I used to be quite fairly good on it, but I haven't played it. I keep picking up, but sometimes I'll have a spell on it and I don't play it.
He picks it up nearly every day now. It's just a dust around it.
Yeah. Anything underneath the top of that is block work. And then above it, we've probably got about...
Well, depending on the thickness of the truss.
The truss, yeah. Probably 3 or 4 course of bricks. But they've got to be cut on the same angle, and then your window sits down on top of it.
Yeah.
It's alright, no.
Right, well, here's the thing. Rover P6. So, you know, it's a classic car magazine, and I'm reading about the Rover here, and yeah, I mean, this is a sort of a bridge car in a way. Talk about bridge cameras, but this is a bit of a bridge car, obviously. Sort of a bridge between old classics, say from the 50s and 60s, really. Though this came out that time, obviously, but a bridge between those sort of old, what we would think really old technology, to a sort of more modern car. But it actually wasn't as modern as you kind of think, because it didn't have air conditioning as standard at all. It wasn't even an option, I don't think, until maybe some of the later cars perhaps, but I don't even think it was then. But the point is, and this is what I'm talking about really, they're talking about bringing this car into being more of a modern car. You know, it's an old car, it's classic, and to be able to drive it and have it keeping up with modern traffic and for feeling like a modern car, that's the issue. And the thing is, this is an old car. Now, for a car that you drive around and actually will keep up with modern traffic and kind of modern road conditions, actually you'll even cruise on the motorway, this is one of the only cars, I think, that goes back to sort of basic technology. I mean, you cannot get much more basic than a 2CV. Door handles, windows, single speed little wipers, ventilation system that you just open the flap up, a heating system where the air that from where the fan is cooling the surface of the engine is actually also blowing it through a heat exchanger and coming in. I mean, you cannot get much more basic than this old car, really. Small little flat screen, just everything about it. This is an old car. This is a classic car. So, to me, there's two kinds of cars. There's old cars like this, and there's kind of modern cars. Now, modern cars are like this. This Jag. This car is modern, obviously. Self-dimming rear view mirrors, automatic gearbox, I don't know, climate control, cruise control. You know, it's a thoroughly modern car, but it's considered a classic now. Well, I think it is in the way that we call cars classics, because it's well, soon it'll be getting on to 20 years old, but it's an old style design, and it's got a sort of a classic shape. This Jag, I mean, it's the same kind of shape that's been going since it first came out. When the XJ6 came out, the shape hasn't really changed that dramatically. You know, it's a three-box design and old technology, rear-wheel drive and everything. So you kind of think of it like that now. And you know, who buys cars like this? Not many people now. Even actually second-hand ones, because these just don't fetch the money. So what am I talking about? I'm saying that we've got a lot of cars now, and I own a number of them, like this Renault Aventime. It's a modern car. It's got everything on it. It looks modern. It doesn't really look that old, and yet it's sort of in the realms of being a classic, or it's an old car. I mean, this is an old car. It's about 15 years old now. You wouldn't think so, really. Certainly doesn't look like an old car when you drive down the road, because of the shape is fairly modern, and people that don't know the car just think it's a fairly modern Renault. So what I'm talking about is that you've got cars like my old Dodge, say that 47 Dodge that's in there, or that 2CV of mine, and they're old cars, they're old technology. Everything about them is old, and rather, by today's standards, rather basic. They have no electronic system at all. The wiring looms on them are so straightforward, and most of the mechanical parts can be replicated. And then we have these cars like this, which frankly if a light comes up on the dash, it fails the MOT. Your warning light doesn't go out, and if you haven't got the right sensors or the electronic gizmos to replace or repair that have gone wrong, then the car basically will be scrapped. This was apparent with my Volvo, where the car had no rust on it. It drove beautiful. The engine was fantastic. The gear, everything worked on it. But there were electrical or sensor problems, God knows what, or problems with the loom, I don't know, and nobody could repair them. So the car, I got rid of it. So these cars are modern in that sense, and we're looking at all these cars and saying, well, they're beautiful now and everything, but how many of them will be around in another 40 or 50 years because of the unavailability of parts, or the ability for anyone to just keep them going and keep all the warning lights going out? I'm not actually talking about the question of fuel and whether we go to electric, because that's another issue. I'm just assuming that we just carry on as we are, which we probably all know that we're not going to. But these cars are not my Dodge. They're 70 years old. Once you've got it running now, if you keep lubricating it, greasing the grease points, changing the oil regularly and doing maintenance work like that, that car just carries on. These cars, you can treat them with absolute love and devotion, and then they fail because some contact, some corrosion, who knows what, something happens in some contact somewhere and a sensor fails and warning lights come on, the car doesn't work. As my Volvo did, it went into limp mode, nobody knows why. So that Rover, getting back to the Rover, so the Rover was in between. The Rover was not really a basic car with all the crudities about it that say the Dodge has. It was really quite a modern looking car and a modern car to drive. But it wasn't modern really, it was an old car, so it fell in between. So I think there's kind of three groups of cars there. And I suppose we can look back and say, well, maybe there's more, because if you go back to the veterans and the vintage cars, which do the London to Brighton veteran run, they're even more basic position really, the one that I've never really been attracted to. I suppose the truth is I'm more attracted to the first group I was talking about, the cars like the Dodge and the 2CV. This group of cars, these really super modern ones, which are now becoming rare, like this Renault, I mean, I love them, but I'm aware of the fact that they're great while they work, but when they go wrong, they're just a heap of metal and glass and plastic. And I suppose I'm upset because of my Volvo having to dump it in the end, because basically that's what I did do. But I just couldn't carry on finding ways of getting it going. So, what's going to be interesting is what cars will be around in another 20 or 30 years, let alone 70 as that car is, 70 years old. I personally wonder if any of these cars will be around, because the way the politicians are falling into this pollution, environmental trap, they're going to want to ban all this lot. And we're just going to create another minefield, actually, of electricity. The same way they decided that it would be better to, in England that is, to get rid of the railways and rely on the roads, and that was a short-sighted venture, just as they decided to get rid of glass bottling and paper packaging and go to plastic, and now they've realized that was misguided. I think the fact that they're going to go away from fossil fuels and internal combustion engines and go away to electricity, which is created or somewhere, some central point, and then distributed by cables to your house, and then you have to hook up and battery. I'm not convinced on this at all. Absolutely not convinced. But time will tell, I guess. So back to cars. It's a nice car, this. That light that keeps flashing. So the Dodge has got a cover over it, try to keep the dust off it really from the development here. all the cars are getting so filthy. The Jag gets filthy. I had this out actually the other day, did about 40 miles in it, drove beautifully. The Dodge, I've started it up and it's fine, but I'm not going to take that out on the roads now until the winter's gone. We're onto a bit more drier conditions. And the Mercedes, well, there again, I'm not going to take that out on the roads at the moment. It's really gone into the position of being a historical vehicle to me. I mean, it's one that I've had for 20 years now. Actually, I've had it over 20 years now. I'm coming out, this is the 21st year that I've owned it. So I'm going to really look after it. And this car here, now that it's undercover for a bit, I think I'm going to get a cover for this Crossfire. I don't drive it much at the moment. The Amy, the Citroen Amy here, that's going to have, as soon as the weather warms up, I'm going to take that over to the body shop people and have a little bit of rust that's underneath the window in the front. I'm going to have that seen too. Because at the moment I'm running my 2CV over there as an everyday car. I'm running it to try and run it in because it's off to Croatia this year. I'm hoping that in the next week or two we'll be fitting a new carburetor and a new starter motor. And there isn't much left on that car that hasn't been replaced or is brand new. The engine now is partly new. Yeah, that's should hopefully be alright. The development's coming on, getting higher and higher. That steel that's there, that's how high it will be eventually. So now we're going up on the second floor here. The weather's against us here because it's getting so cold at times we can't lay bricks or anything. But got some work done today. All that those white blocks were laid there and some more on the other side. Right, so here's the thing. Right, well, we're alone. Here, and this is it. This is what I really want to talk about, and it bugs me because I read so many things in these classic car magazines about classic cars, and first of all, I don't really understand what classic cars are. I mean, we're talking about old cars. Let's be honest. We're talking about old cars. Instead of wanting to drive around in a new car, well, all the time, occasionally, or maybe a lot of the time, maybe all the time, I don't know, depends on the individual, we'd like to drive around in an old car. And we call it a classic car, then it sounds better, eh? Old car sounds crap. But what's an old car? Ah, there's an old car, look, that Jag. No, it's not, it's a classic. The thing is, most of these cars may not even be able to be driven in a number of years because of legislation or fuel, availability or whatever, or parts availability, or whatever reason that will appear in the future. But at the moment, a lot of us enjoy driving these old cars. There are cars that are completely out of reach. We all know what they are. They cost, hundreds of thousands to buy, and they're not really in the equation as far as I'm concerned. They're interesting, obviously, to talk about, maybe to read and look at. But how many people can afford that? That's just and why do people have them? They're an investment. You spend $500,000 on a car. You're likely to use it a lot? Not really. I wouldn't have thought so. So that brings us down to cars that are quite expensive and fall into the the high realms of £50,000 or dollars, whatever you want to call it, maybe to 100,000. And these are cars which maybe you have one, somebody maybe saves up or puts all their money into it and has one of these and they drive it at car shows and things like that. That's a big hobby, eh? That's really good. But I think the real market is the people that have cars that fall into an affordable bracket, a bracket that's basically, well, in my way of thinking, and this is, obviously open to personal opinion, but in my way of thinking, somewhere between about, and I'm talking English pounds, £5,000 to maybe 12 something, just over 10. It's sort of a bracket that a lot of people can afford to invest or indulge in that sort of money, and maybe have one or two cars, because at least one thing about classic cars are that if you buy one for maybe more money even than you can afford, let's say £7,000 or £8,000, you buy one, and then you get the bug, like we all do. You want another car you like, and but you don't really want to get rid of the one you got, so you buy a second one, and so forth. But at least they don't drop dramatically in value, and you could actually keep them on a shoestring by really not driving them too much and having them on, in England, on not taxing them properly, because you can have them on what they call SORN, so you're not paying the full tax, but you can't drive them on the road. But so you've got them on the minimum insurance, minimum taxation, and they just basically sit around. So they're not really costing you anything to have, and repairs or anything, running costs. But you've got a car that probably will at least hold its value, and when you sell it again, after, for whatever reason, you've had the enjoyment of it, you can sell it and get most of your money back that you paid for it. So it's not a bad prospect, really. It's not like going on holidays, drinking, whatever, and enjoy yourself, but then the money's gone and everything's just in your mind. And well, at least with a car, it's there. You can touch it. Look, you can touch it. It's really good. And why do people have these cars? What are they looking for? Now, I still maintain that there are some few basic reasons that people have the cars they have. This car here, and I'm going to just talk about my car. This car here is a 1947 Dodge. Now, when I was a young boy, my dad had a car like this, and cars were all like this. They were very similar in design. So this car reminds me of my youth, or my young days, and takes me back in time. And I think the older you are, the more that's important to you. It's something that you seek. So this car, that's what this car is, and that's why I feel a lot of people buy. Now, but of course, people who are much younger than me, they'll be looking at cars from the, 80s or 90s, and when they were young, and that's the cars they'll be buying, and they mean as much to them as this car does to me. And then another reason people buy old cars, like this Jag. Now, this car is only 15 years old or something like that. It's a bit, I'm getting on, 16, 17 years old now. But 16, 17 years ago, I couldn't afford to, or I couldn't justify to buy that car new. And that's another thing. It's a question of justifying. I might have spent, and I did spend money similar to it, buying vans and maybe other old cars collectively together. But I couldn't have justified going out and spending one car, what that car cost when it was new. It's a lot of money, but now I can indulge myself in something that I couldn't afford to have at a previous time in my life. So that's a different thing to buying this car, which was like nostalgic. This is bringing back nostalgia to me. But that car was fulfilling something that I couldn't have done, and I think a lot of people buy those cars, and I look at the fact that BMWs from the 80s, Porsches from the 80s, where a lot of these cars are very popular, and I think to myself, a lot of them are really because, well, not maybe necessarily Porsche because they're quite expensive, but cars where they're sort of around 10 grand, 15 grand, cars that were, even in the 80s or early 90s cost, I don't know, 40,000, 50,000 pounds, and now you can buy them for, a small amount. That is a real big draw. So there's two different draws there. And I think they're the two, to me, they're the two main reasons. And then, of course, you get the bug, because sometimes you can be driving old cars like this, and you get hooked on it. It's just something nice to go out for a change and actually relate to the car. You know, you have a relationship with it. It's and you seem to have to care for it. It's a nurturing feeling that you have with the car, and a real pleasure that when you've done work on it, you spent money on it, whatever, you've looked after it, and it repays you by, you know, driving well, and you know, people look at you and they love the car and they're admiring it, and you know, it's a really nice feeling. So that's good. But none of these things to me relate to investment. I mean, yes, you can justify it by saying that I haven't thrown all my money away, that I could actually sell it again, because it's a large chunk of money that I can't really afford, you know. So you justify it by saying, well, I haven't actually thrown it away. I'm enjoying the money while it's invested in the car, but I could actually sell it. The trouble is, in the end, you don't want to sell it. You get like me, you end up buying another car and another car and another car, and you end up soon, before you look around, you've got 10 cars or something, and you haven't sold any of them. And then you have to start saying, well, you know, I need to sell them for lots of reasons. I can't look after them enough, too expensive, you know, and so on, and I can't drive them enough, and so on. And then, of course, you've got, I think there's another side there. There's the side where there's a lot of cars which are basically just old cars, and people, you know, have them and justify in their mind that they're classics, because basically it's better to be driving a classic than an old car, you know. This might be a Metro, or, sorry, just no disrespect to people that like Metros or anything, or Allegros, or any Austin Princesses, because obviously these, you know, they were cars that have been in the doldrums for a long time, and a lot of people like them, obviously, but now they're of interest, and you get to the point where it's almost like social PC. It's not socially correct, even to politically correct in the classic car world, to call any car an old car. Every car is a classic. That is really what I don't like, and that was the point of this little ramble or rant, whichever you want to call it. I just don't like the term classic cars, really. I mean, you know, what is a classic car? They're just cars, and most cars of a certain type from a certain era all were very similar, and they had a classic look at that time. This Dodge was typical of, you know, cars of its period. And if you look at Buicks and General Motors products, this was a Chrysler product. But no, there was a similarity in the designs of all these cars. Even the mechanical components were very similar. You know, when you look at luxury cars and what they put into them, you know, the shapes are totally different, obviously. But you know, when you sit in, I mean, I've got a Mercedes of sort of this period, and what else have I got? I can't even remember now. But even that, you know, I've got my Mercedes, and I had the Volvo, similar Volvo. But you know, the things, the functions that the car had, and the luxury items that it had were all very similar. You know, whether it was dipping mirrors that came in, or memory seats and everything. So they said, you know, there was a familiarity in the controls and all the things you would expect. So if you bought a car in a certain period, you expect it to have cruise control and you know electric seats and heated seats and so on. So there was a very big similarity between them. That's the same with these cars, really. But basically, they're all old cars and old technology, and you know, you get hooked on it, and well, I do, and I'm certainly hooked on the old simplicity, really, of the cars, like this one, and my 2CV, and that's other Citroen Amy that I have. But then I like these cars, which have got fantastic luxury, and are a product that I really couldn't justify. You know, I couldn't justify going out and spending, I don't know, 80, 90,000 pounds now for a new Jag, when basically I got that one for, you know, around 3,000. Why would I really want to go and spend? I don't understand it. But of course, if you're a company or you're wealthy or whatever, you wouldn't want to be seen dead in an old Jag. You only want to be seen alive in a new one. I think I should end this now. I'm done here because this is I'm talking too much. But anyway, I think you get the message. Right, so we'll put this to bed. Right, so we've got 1947 Dodge. Gets a cover. Treated with, well, it should be treated with more respect. It's an old girl now, isn't it? 70 odd years old. 71 years old. 72 years, coming up, maybe 72 years. And that car, so there's a big difference between the two, but fundamentally, this is the point. They're both old cars. That one is 16, 17 years old now, and that one is 72 years old. But they're old cars. Actually, funny, that one's worth more than that. And then when that was new, that was a pretty mediocre model. It certainly wasn't a luxury car. It was middle of the road or slightly lower than middle of the road. That was obviously a luxury car. And what does it all matter when they get beyond 5 or 6 years? They're just old hunks of metal and plastic and glass. Okay. Now, that's an old car. But you see, what is it? What do you see? Now, the truth is, it's an old wreck. It's a wreck of a car. And, but somebody else, it's a classic. Yeah, why not? Incidentally, this is where the steering wheel came from my 2CV. See, it's got no steering wheel because that lovely blue steering wheel that's in my 2CV came from this. Yes, so this beautiful, absolutely beautiful steering wheel came from that old Diane. Look at it. It's very tactile because it's smooth. It's beautiful. It feels really solid. I mean, it is really, really solid. The one that was on here was black plastic. Felt very light. It felt hollow. It felt rough, and it felt like it had imperfections that were not meant to be there when you put your hand. But this is just one solid piece. And of course it's blue. Oh, it's got two advantages actually, this one over the original. One is the color, because the color is it's a blue, kind of a blue, and of course it matches the car, and it's slightly bigger. It's slightly bigger in circumference or diameter, whichever way you want to do it, than the original. So it makes the steering a little bit lighter. Now it's like a bit of a bus, really. It is massive, but then that's what a 2CV is. It's what the car is. But you got more. You got better leverage, when you more torque, as it were, because you got a bigger wheel. You're turning the steering without power steering. Obviously, they don't have power steering in 2CVs, by the way. I might point that out. Anyway, so it is a little easier to drive. Especially when you're trying to turn the wheel when you're parking and everything. But not that actually 2CVs are heavy at all. There's no reason for them to be heavy. They're a very light car. And you've got little amount of tread on the ground, so you have less grip. I mean, you're not trying to turn some pair of bloody great big wide tires that like limpets to the ground. Anyway, yeah, that's really nice. So I'm really pleased with that. Yeah. So the other thing about this car is that it's going in next week to have a new carburetor fitted. So I've done all this work on the engine and everything, and I've got the new coil, which is amazing. I mean, this car just starts as soon as you turn the key. Freezing cold, turn the key, it starts. That new coil and the new leads, just amazing. So, but they're great. But I'll now have a new carburetor and a new starter motor. I think the only thing that I'm left with is an alternator. And maybe I might even change that, because then I've got a new car and I'm all set up to go to Croatia. So that's going to happen next week. And then I've also, and it's being delivered, I've got the same coil and lead set up that's in this remarkable. I've got it in the Amy. I'm going to have it fitted in the Amy, and that'll be interesting to see if it does actually improve things, because that car is about, I couldn't even start it the other day actually. So when the coil is fitted and the new leads, it'll be really interesting to see if that car starts now, because the Amy, which is under the cover there, has always been a bad starter. Always, all the years I've had it. Well, I'm looking forward to taking this to Croatia this year. Hi. Right, so my dog's running around here because he wants to be fed. Hi. So I'm going to have to do that. But I just remembered something. I found some video that I had done on the 2CV when I first bought it. So this is the story about the 2CV when I bought it. Well, these are my two new cars. Two little Citroen 2CVs. This one looks good, but actually is no good. Don't know why I bought it really. It's got a bent chassis and a few other problems, but this one's going to go. It looks alright, but needs a lot of structural work on it. This one doesn't look quite as good because it had mice in it, but it's been sitting for about 3 years, and the lady died, and it had one owner from new. It's got a new engine. It's actually in very good condition, and it is going to be completely restored in the next few months, restored to its original condition. Same colours. The body will be taken off, repaired, repainted, new roof, engine all serviced and cleaned up, suspension will be sandblasted. All these bits here that are rusty, they can all be replaced, and you can replace them now with stainless steel, so they'll be like new. All new decals on it, and it'll be a nice little dolly again, we hope.